Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. For the next sessions at breakout session, this is the session where I will go over the financial assistance that are available to provide support to EL students. Again, my name is Seng Nalu. I have been with the ISBE for so many years. How many of you saw me here last year? Okay, so that means you are not so new to the bilingual education program, but almost all of you are new. This is your first time, and welcome to the Bilingual Program Directors Conference. This is our annual conference where we can share any update information for all our school districts. In past year, each and every year, before the pandemic, we would go out to different regions and provide a one-day, two-day training workshop for our new program directors. But because of the situation that we are in right now, we kind of bring everybody together on the very first day and try to see if we can communicate all the requirements for the bilingual program directors on the very first day. And what we have here is that we have, like you heard earlier, we have over 640 school districts that are identified as serving from 1 student to over 75,000 students. And 75,000 is CPS. I was with ISBE since 1988, long time ago. Okay, over 30 years. And when I first joined ISBE, we have about 50,000 EL students. Now we have over 254,000 students. And just so that you know, this presentation, I prepare for 30 or so slides, but because there's only limit time, 25 minutes, I'm gonna go over that pretty quick. This session will be covered again on Friday. And that will include seasonal program director, and we will go over each of these grant program report in details. If you are here on Friday and you need to know the detail of these grant, please feel free to come to that session on Friday. This presentation will be recorded and will be posted in the multilingual website, so you can have access to it whenever you want it. Okay, the way I lay out this presentation is that I'm gonna lay out from what are some of the core funding that school districts should use to fund EL program. And the way I had it is I'm gonna start out with the local funding sources, and then the state funding. Then we can move on to the federal funding, which is federal Title III program, and then other federal grants. And from there, I will go into the grant applications and report some of the accountability report that come along with each of these grants. The core requirements services for EL students, was based on, Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Equal Education Opportunity Act, the ESSA, the Lau versus Nickel class action lawsuit, Castaneda, Pickard, and the Illinois School Code. EL students are based on this requirement, both the federal and state, EL services are required to be provided for all EL students. When we talk about EL students, we talk about student first. And when we talk about student, we talk about students in general are entitled to receive equitable services based on these requirements. With or without state bilingual education grant or the federal grant. This law protects all children. They shouldn't be able to get all the service necessary needed for them. So with that comes the funding and accountability. If you look at this diagram, the very first floor is the core foundation of what you should provide it to all students. EL student is all your students. You are to provide services with your local funding, your federal funding, before you even move it to the state funding, bilingual education funding, and then on top of that is the Title III, that's the federal. We have lots of Title III program directors. Each and every year, about 1/3 of our program directors we have a turnover, and many of our program directors are wearing multiple hats. Okay, there are sometimes special ed director that become a bilingual program director. Sometimes the student service director become the bilingual program director. Sometimes the associate superintendent is becoming, sometimes a teacher is the program directors of that. But this is what, as a program director, you need to know what are the source of funding that should go toward EL student. EL student is one of the group of the students that generate the most funding for your school district. They can be dual EL student. They are EL student with low income, at-risk student, Title III student. These are all the EL student generate all this funding. So how do you funding EL student? First of all, there are students in your school district. They should be supported just like any student through the local funds, generate from property tax or your school referendum. On top of that, there's your state evidence-based funding. The EBF or Student Success Act was passed back in August 31st, 2017. For those of you who were bilingual program director prior to that, there was allocation on an annual basis. There are allocated to individual school district, and they need to complete a bilingual education application to receive that funding. But after the EBF Act was passed in August 31st, 2017, the state combined the general state aid, special education, low income, and English learners fund into one single funding source known as your EBF. So if you look at this, keep in mind, we're talking about English learner funds, used to be known as State Bilingual Education Fund. They combine all of that into EBF, and that money comes to your school district monthly as EBF. But you need to know that in this pot of money, there's EBF fund that included in there. So here we go from your local funding for the student, your state funding, and on top of that, you have federal funding. How many of you had the opportunity to see the consolidated district plan that was submitted to ISBE? A few of you. But annually, all school districts that receive federal and state grant, they are also required to submit the consolidated district plan. And these are all the different grants from the federal that your school district are receiving to support EL student and student with special needs and all of that. Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title V, IDEA, all of these are federal grant. When you hear about title, that's a federal grant. And so we have the local funding, state funding. On top of that, we have a federal funding. And so here are the funding that go toward your EL student. As a program director, you need to make sure that your local school district leverage all this funding to provide services for your EL student. Where do you find the allotment? How do I track the funds? And when do I report it? Well, each and every year around July, at the beginning of the July, the state provide the school district, here are your total part of EBF fund for fiscal year 23. Under that fiscal year 23, the law requires that they need to tee out what portion of the EBF fund is allocated to ELEBF. Is ELEBF. ELEBF also used to be known as the State Bilingual Education Fund. Where can you find that? It is located in ISBE website. There's a link below here. There's a link right here where you can click and it will take you to the ELEBF. And under that ELEBF, you can click on Report 2023. You can go back to 2019, 18, and take a look at the history of how your district were funded under ELEBF. The ELEBF is where your funding allocation here. So the screenshot here show that, hey, you know, that one school district has a $54.38 ELEBF. They're probably just in one student or not. And their need is probably not as great as other school districts. And we have 720, a total of, we have somewhere between, go all the way up to $35 million CPS, ELEBF. So if you want to find out exactly what is your allocation for the 2000 ELEBF that go toward EL student, you can go into this website and you need to know what is the amount because what happened as a program director, this money is intended to be used for the year that it was allotted to you, not to shelve that money useful a year later. Prior to 2018, if you don't use that money go to be redistributed to other school districts. So that money, ELEBF, is intended to be used for the year that it was allotted to you. You as program director need to sit down with your business manager saying, hey, this part of money that comes to you as part of the EBF, 10,000, 20,000, or 500,000 is ELEBF. We need to plan this, have a ledger of how we're going to use this money to support EL students. This money is on top of the core funding that supposed to go toward paying for EL services. So any service related to EL student you can use the ELEBF. For example, your conference today, if you don't have a Title III school district federal, and that's the ELEBF, you can use this ELEBF to sign up to pay for your travel, hotel, lodging to attend the conference. You can use this money to pay for supplemental native language instructional supply for your EL student. You can use this money to pay for paraprofessional. You can use this money as one of the requirements of the state is to reduce class size. The law requires that an EL self-contained classroom has to be 90% of the average of a regular class size for that particular grade, for that particular school. If that requires you to hire additional teachers to reduce class size, this is the money what it is for. The intent of the ELEBF is to pay for extra costs. So you as a program director need to have a budget ledger like this in place so that, and at the end of the year, the only requirements of the ELEBF is that 60% of what your fundings are has to go toward instructional related activity. The rest of that can go toward program director salary, professional developments, parent involvement activity, a slew of activity they can use. Because not only that you are required the district are required to submit an evidence-based funding spending plan for EL program. And so that's why the detailed budget here is important, that you can use it to plan your budget so that you can share that. Because one of the requirements, if you have a lot of students, you have a TBE program, and you have a bilingual parent advisory committee, one of the requirements is that you need to share this spending plan with your BPAC so that they can provide the input for you. Spending plan must be reviewed for input from the BPAC. For small school district, which many of you are, and you don't have a TBE, you don't need to have the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee, and you don't need to have them review this plan, okay? But if you do, then that is one of the requirements. What is the requirements of the EL-EBF? Because under the state, because the law hasn't changed when the EBF funding went into effect, it still requires school district, because the initial law required that district has to submit an application, and the application has to be substantially approved so that the funding can be dispersed to the school district. That hasn't changed. So what we do to accommodate that is that we require school district to submit it at the end of each fiscal year, an expenditure report, just one time. It is only for the EL-EBF portion of the fund. In around June, your allocation that you see on the spreadsheet that I showed it to you earlier will be posted together with any carryover funds that you may have onto the expenditure report. You as a program director who are a district that receive at least $5,000 EBF fund or more are required to file a final expenditure report to the state of how you spend that money. And that is why I reiterate that again. It is important for you as a program director to have that budget ledger planned with your fiscal manager so that you know at the end of the fiscal year how much you spent and on what budget line item. Material, paraprofessional, professional development, whatever you have it, you need to plan that, okay? In addition to that, all school district needs to submit a program delivery report. I don't know if you have heard of that, but it was due this year. It was due a month ago, okay? And any school district that received 5,000 or more EL-EBF are required to file that and or Title III. That's another report that you are required to complete. So let me kind of just get a quick survey here. How involved are you with your budget planning at all? I mean, if you receive only information, notifications to you that, hey, we have funding, but you never really get involved with it, can you raise your hand? That I would consider low participation. If you receive it, and you are the decision maker as a program director, determine that, hey, this is our need analysis, this is our priority, this is what we need to spend the money on. You put that budget plan to that, present it to your superintendent, present it to your board, and get approved for you to go ahead and implement those activities. I would consider that a high level of involvement. How many of you has good? There's a few hands, but that's what the roles of the program director when it comes to determine what is the need for your EL student and how you're going to budget to meet that need. That's the stake. Many of time your school districts call and saying, hey, where do I find a grant? Where is the bilingual education grant? Or where is my EL grant? There's so many grants, okay? So you need to be very clear. EL-EBF is the state. Now, let's move to federal funding sources. Each and every year, Illinois is probably the fifth state that receives most appropriation from the Fed when it comes to funding from the federal to provide supplemental EL services to EL students. They are known as a federal Title III. They are supposed to be for activity that supplement the requirements of all the law that I said it early. Title VI, EOA, the state, Article 14C, the state mandated program. Federal fund is to be supplementing that. And the federal Title III, Illinois was appropriate of about $26 million annually. Of that $26 million, $25 million going to LEAs to support English learners. And the Title III has two grants. One is called the Title III LIPS, and the other one is called the Title III Immigrant Student Education Program. How many of you have a Title III programs in here? Good, because we'll talk more about this. So by now, all of you that have a Title III funding allocation for 2023, you should have already submitted the applications to us. If not, please do so right away, because any school district that have not submitted your Title III, which was due August 31st, you will be, and if you are late after September 15, you will be required to submit a request to our program director, Joanne Clyde, asking for permission to accept your application for Title III. Okay, so if you have not submitted, we have about 20 or 30 school districts that are still late, so please do so. So that's right, Title III is supplemental, is raspberry, icing on the cake. In addition to when you apply for Title III, what are some of the reporting documents that come along with that? A, the state make it a requirement that every grant, before we can approve any title grants, state grant or any grant, your CDP has to be approved first. So if you don't get your application approved yet, it couldn't be A because your CDP hasn't been approved, your consolidated district plan. For Title III grant, not ELEBF, for the Title III grant, your LIPS grant, your ISAP immigrants grant, or your bilingual education award grant, you are required to do a grant periodic report. In 2022, we moved from quarterly to semi in 2022, and the state is moving into one annual report at the end of the year for 2023. Okay, but because our Title III, the fiscal year kind of a little bit off from the regular fiscal year that the state has, all our Title III are required to also submit an additional report, which cover the months of July and August. All Title III, unlike the ELEBF that the money comes directly to you without having to submit any claim, all of Title III, you are required to submit expenditure report in order to get your money. Expenditure reports are due quarterly, October 20th, the first quarter, October 20th, and every quarter, the following months, the 20th is where your expenditure report is due. It's cumulative report. That's so that you can get your money. Federal Title III is supplemental, not supplanted, both for the language instruction program and for immigrant education program. The purpose of that is to improve the education for EL students by assisting them in learning and meeting challenging state and academic content and standard. ISAP is also served this same purpose, but ISAP is not limited to EL students. ISAP includes every student who were born outside of the United States and have not enrolled in any of U.S. schools for more than 3 academic years. It can be students from Australia, English-speaking country, Canada, or Great Britain, as long as they were born outside of the United States, including Puerto Rico, they are considered immigrant students. The way we funded Title III is formula-based. Around January, they are based on the number of EL students report in your SIS. This including every EL student. It includes all the students whose parents refuse services. Included private school EL students that you consult with, and they have identified that. Those are counted toward the formula funding. Formula funding for fiscal year 2023 is $100 per student. So language instruction education, all school districts serving EL students are eligible to apply for the federal Title III LIP. Funding is based on the number of EL student formula grant. Districts wishing to apply for Title III LIP are required to submit an intent to apply because we only have a limited resource of funding. We need to know who is applying so that collectively we have the total number and we can distribute the appropriation to the school district equitably. The only requirement from the Fed is that if you're going to apply for Title III as a single district, you need to have enough students to generate $10,000. And so for those school districts, like in 2020, if you have fewer than 100 students, most likely we will ask that you form a co-op with other school districts so that collectively, as a consortium, you have 100 students or more, and that will generate 10,000, and one of the districts will serve as the admin district, and the other can be the member district. So to be eligible, now it's probably late for 2023 because allocations have already been committed. But for 2024, in order for you to allocation to be allotted for you for Title IIIA, you need to submit the intent to apply, which will be available sometime in January, due in March. At that time, you also need to consult private school to see if there are any EL student within your school district boundary that wants to participate in the program. You need to submit a consolidated district plan because all title grant need to submit one and need to get that approved. In addition to that, come around June, the application will be published for your school district with your allotment, and you need to submit that Title III application. At the end of the fiscal year, you need to complete a GATA reporting, keep the state update, how did you use the fund, and what is the outcome of the activity that you use Title III funds pay for, short-term outcome or long-term outcome. You need to file a quarterly expenditure report in order to get your money. ISAP is similar. All school districts serving immigrant children and youth are eligible to apply for Title III ISAP. Like I said, the immigrant student is defined as someone who was born outside of the U.S. and Puerto Rico and has not been enrolling in any U.S. school for more than 3 full academic years. It is also required that eligible district must have at least 10 immigrant students enrolling in the current year, okay? And it must have an increase of 50 students or 3%, whichever is fewer, in order to be qualified. District wishing to apply for the ISAC will also need to submit the ITA. It's a consolidated ITA for Title III LIP and ISAP. The district does not need to form a consortium. For ISAP, you don't need to have a $10,000 in order to apply. You can apply for ISAP and you don't have to apply for Title III LIP, okay? So, to summarize that, to be eligible for the Title III ISAP, submit the intent to apply, consult with your private school, submit consolidated district plan, submit the Title III application, complete GADA report, file quarterly expenditure report. These are all the report and the requirements. Again, this is a summary of that. I'm going to skip that. The GADA report, I already covered that. For 23, there's going to be 2 reports. And in the GADA report, we will make it available, a spreadsheet like this, so that you can list the activity you said you were going to complete for 2023, follow with, what have they out asking you when and what implementation have you provided based on those program activity and what is the outcome, and submit it to ISBE. And that spreadsheet will be made available for you. Expenditure report, quarterly basis, and you can go into iWAS to file your electronic expenditure report. Program delivery report usually come out in June, completed by June 31st. This week that we see 5,000 ELEBF and Title III are required to submit this to the state so that we can integrate those, aggregate those data and submit it to the Fed. Key important dates. Okay, this is the site where you can go and click on that, and it will link you to when each of these activities needs to be complete and submitted to ISBE. If you have any question, you can call or write it ISBE, the multilingual departments, and you saw all school districts. For those of you who do not have a Title III, your district is assigned to a consultant based on the region. Okay, and you can look at that, and you can contact your assigned consultant. If you have any question, any other question, if you cannot reach your assigned consultant, feel free to reach out to others as well. Everybody should be able to provide you the technical assistance you needed. Okay, I will be available to answer any question that you may have. How many minutes do you have? You're already over time. Okay, all right. Good, I'm just rushing this through you, but I'll go through this in more detail on Friday if you guys want. Mm-hmm. Thank you all.